Breedinum Radio, brought to you by Pertnear Outdoors, your source for all things deer hunting and the rut here in New York State, right in your backyard, so you can get up in the stand and pound them all season long.
Alrighty, we are here tonight with Jim Dagostino from PA. We've had Jim on before. We met him down at the Total Archery Challenge last year. I think we were hoping to see you again this year, but it got canceled. So you ended up killing a nice buck, and we figured we'd get you on and have a conversation and see what happened there.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I was hoping to run into you guys again up at the Total Archery Challenge, but COVID had other plans. So still trying to coordinate with your brother on getting up there for a hunt, or at least maybe a meat cutter's day or something, so I could learn a little something. But we'll see what the future holds. Have
you not butchered many of your own, or?
No, not really, to be honest with you. I mean, I've done enough to get it done, but I'd like to be a little more proficient at it. I tend to make a mess, and I don't think I make the most of the amount of cuts that you can get out of it. I see a lot that people post online, and even the stuff that you guys do. You guys seem like you have it down. I'd like to get some more equipment and hone my craft a little bit,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's definitely, this year I've had the discussions with my wife because with the newborn and stuff, she doesn't really want me exposed to too many people in one enclosed area. So we've had the discussions about, all leading up to season, and is it going to be bad enough that we shouldn't be, hanging out in the garage with 10, 12 people drinking beer every week, So I was really dreading that because, I mean, we have such a system set up that, I know exactly what I'm doing when I'm there, and I don't really worry about anything else. So it's like I see it all. I know how to do it all, but I'm not proficient in it all, I mean, you give me a front quarter and a hind quarter, and I'll hack them up and have them gone, 20, 30 minutes a piece. But, to get into doing steaks and roasts and trimming your back straps and all that stuff's fairly easy. But just stuff you don't normally do, and I don't have the right knives for it, and our own vacuum packers, and it just goes on and on and on when you start thinking about doing it yourself. So
yeah, I mean, it's overwhelming for sure. I mean, like I said, I'll do it every now and then just to kind of save a couple bucks and get the pleasure of taking pride in doing it yourself. But with the newborn, like you said, I just ended up taking him down to the butcher after I got up as many pictures as I could with the family, and that's it. Now it's on him.
How much are they getting for a deer down there? Just for a regular butchering?
Yeah, standard cuts between like $100 and $150, vacuum sealed and everything.
Yeah.
So it's not killer. I mean, for the amount of time and effort and stuff it's going to save me, especially with like having a kid, it's worth every penny,
I told Martha when we were talking about me cutting myself, I'm like, you realize that's going to take like 2, 3, 4 nights in the garage to do it the way we do it over there in, an hour, So I'm like, I really don't want to do that, but if it gets bad enough, I will. So luckily we've been avoiding that so far, and we've been able to go over to the garage and get things cut up quick. And that buck I shot the other night, or last week there, we cut it up Monday night. That thing went 160 pounds. So that was a pretty good deer.
Nice. Yeah, that's one thing I regret. I didn't get to weigh mine this year. I didn't hang around. I had to make trick or treat night. So I quick dumped them off and like headed out,
Yeah. I got to guess they'd probably weigh him, let you know what he weighed.
Yeah, I think actually it might end up being on my slip when I go to pick them up. So
yeah,
I'll have to get back to
you. It's funny because you're normally doing 100 to 115 pound deer on a regular basis, does and small bucks. It's like you slap a 160 pound deer on a table and it's like, holy shit, we got some cutting to do.
Yeah. Yeah, you ain't kidding. That was definitely a hog you down this year, man. That's congratulations. What a freaking beast.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because when we started getting pictures of him, I didn't think it was that great of a deer. And then whoever, I'm not sure who I'm going to have mount it yet. My neighbor might possibly do it. He told me that he does stuff on the side. Let him know if I get one. So I might have him do it. But if not, wherever I take it, I want to try to get the bottom jaw back, because just out of curiosity on age on him. Body wise, you'd think 3.5, but just the character and the way his face looks and shit, it's like, God, he just looks like an older deer.
He looks like he's been through battle, man, like a real bruiser. And his bases are so thick, man. I definitely put him over 3. I'd guess 4 at least.
That's the thing that the pictures don't really show. I've never scored deer. I think that's the first deer I've ever actually tried to score, because I'm in a hunting Western New York challenge there. And they're actually having you, Boone and Crockett, score your deer for the challenge. And I'm like, well, I've never done this. I don't know how to do it. And Billy said that they're supposed to send a scoring sheet with your hat and shit that you got to get in the challenge. And I don't remember seeing a scoring sheet. So I just went on Boone and Crockett's website, and they actually had a nice calculator, and they had it all drawn out with, A, B, C, D, E, F, and all the measurements you're supposed to take. And I followed that right down through, and it told me it was like 129 and an eighth. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, it just doesn't seem right. But I checked everything, and, I sent that to the guy from the Western New York Hunting Challenge. He was like, that's awesome, man. And he posts it. And then people on fucking Facebook are sitting there bashing it. They're like, there's no way you get 129 inches out of that deer. I'm like, okay, whatever, assholes. I really don't care.
Come on, man.
I was talking to Billy today. I'm like, there's always got to be just one guy, I'm like, it says there, it's an unofficial score. I don't care. I'm like, I never even would have put a tape on the deer if it wasn't for the freaking Western New York Hunting Challenge, which I know he doesn't care either. He's just like, well, you did it. If it gets to the point where we got to do official scores, we'll do official scores. But, for me, it's just, that's part of the reason I don't use Facebook. You don't get any of that shit really on Instagram.
Yeah. I got to tell you, like, with all the different podcasts that are out there now, and all the different YouTube channels, and all the guys that are getting involved with hunting, it's a lot of great content they're putting out, but you get a shit ton of this like bro staff type guys where they're passing up these 120, 130 inch deer and all these different things. And it's like, if you live in an area where you could do that and you have the time to put in to do that, then more power to you. I'm not trying to hate on what anybody's doing, but it's like, for the standard working man with a family who only gets to hunt, like especially in PA, you get, just to hunt Saturdays. I mean, you take what you can get, and thank God that, that came by you at that time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And that's the other thing with all this other content out there is, all these other podcasts, like they are the do it yourself. They are go to public land. They are kill big bucks. Like they are. But if you look at all the stuff they're putting out, they're doing this for a living. Like we are not doing this shit for a living. We didn't start it because we kill big bucks. We started because we kill deer and we put meat in the freezer. We enjoy the sport. We want to share what we do. We know we're not experts, but we know we have a lot of knowledge in it. We've been doing it our whole life. And, there's a lot of people that we've been getting started. A lot of people that have been killing deer right off the bat that we've been helping. And it doesn't really matter what the size of them are. It's about enjoying the sport and being in the outdoors. So for us, I mean, there was last week on our Breedinum Radio when we released it, somebody slapped a comment on there that if you want a podcast that tells you how to kill 2.5-year-olds, being a wise ass. It's like, we're not like every other podcast, we're not doing it for the buck size. We're doing it for the stories. We're doing it for the fun,
Yeah. I tell you, this kind of segues us perfectly into how, I guess, if we want to roll into my story and like everything, because I got sucked into this so hard. Like you could probably even see behind me. I mean, I've got a plethora of 100-inch deer.
Yeah. So do I.
And
if you look at my garage, I got mounts of just, I think I got like 7 2.5-year-old deer on the wall. They're just beautiful racks. And I'm just like, everyone I shoot, I'm like, I love that deer. I'm mounting them. So it's just like, and then I got European mounts, and it's just, finally I quit mounting the 2.5-year-olds and started doing European mounts. But it's like, I'm tickled pink to shoot one of those every year.
Oh, amen, brother. I'm telling you, it's, I got sucked into it hard with trying to get, a 140 plus class deer. And, on my stepdad's farm, there has never been deer of that caliber, at least over the last 10 years. And now this year, there was 3 of them that were caught on camera. I sent your brother a picture of one of them that I had consistent pictures of.
Nice.
And I got so sucked into hunting them that like I kind of forgot about what I was doing it for. I was just like chasing this monster buck of a lifetime, and I was so consumed over it that I just was kind of almost burning myself out and like losing the love for the sport again. And I kind of needed a reset. So,
well, I mean, you get to the point where you're stressing yourself out and it ain't even fun anymore.
I was camera obsessed, like I was checking cameras every week, every Saturday morning, preseason, and then come into the season, I'm out there checking them. I was doing nothing but making things worse on top of the all the other shit
you're
that I
doing
was
all the things you weren't
with.
supposed to do just because you're all excited.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, definitely needed a read. Did Billy tell you about like how my season kind of started? Did he show you any of the videos or anything?
No, so I mean, give us the whole rundown right up to the kill. I mean, how you've been making out, what you've been seeing, and how did you get to where you were?
So back to preseason, I was getting a shit ton of these pictures of bucks of great, my standard 100-inch, 115-inch bucks like crazy. I was getting like 7-8 of them, different one, right? And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I was getting dozens and dozens of pictures of these 2 bucks in particular. One of them was I sent to your brother to get like kind of like a guess score, and everybody that I guess he sent it to Dallas, and they were guessing right around like mid to high 140s, which, like I said, we haven't had a buck on my stepdad's farm like that in 10 plus years. And turns out from talking to the neighbors and shit that there was like triplets. Like there was two 10-pointers and an 8-pointer that were all of mid to high 140s, maybe low 150s. And everybody in this part of Pennsylvania, I guess everywhere, but this part of Pennsylvania, they get super wound up over deer like this, right? So everybody's doing the same thing I was doing, getting hyperventilating over pictures and trying to make sure your spot's perfect and all that crazy shit. And come season time, I get out there on the opening morning, which for my WMU that I was hunting these deer, I was able to start on the 24th of September. So I was able to get out there pretty early. He took off a couple of days of work to see if I can get it done early while he was still consistent on camera. And the guy that the neighboring property to my stepdad, he was out. Dude, he put bleach on my tree. He was out running the skid steer through the woods in the middle of the day when he knew I was out there. What the hell else? He had one of those Bluetooth calls for like coyotes and shit, and he would blast that thing off like 6 o'clock in the morning, like time you're in the woods all the way through, just to try to, because he knew he couldn't hunt, so he was trying to just deter. And he's not a big bow hunter; he's a gun hunter, so he was trying to, I guess, he ruined the deer situation for me in hopes of getting it for him. At least that's the way that I took it. So,
I mean, do you know the guy? Like, has he been weird in the past about shit? Or
we've been civil. I mean, we've always shared deer stories and deer pictures before, but it was never like, he's not a guy I go and have a beer with, but he's a guy I would talk to like once a year around this time. You know what I mean? Just to kind of touch base and, hey, I got a couple good bucks on camera, and he would send me the same thing or whatever. But like I said, maybe you start putting some serious inches on these antlers, and you guys get wound up. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of was getting discouraged, and then I decided to, kind of go back to my roots, which is hunting. I'm not going to give my location away, but hunting about an hour and a half north of that property, and on some public ground. And I used to belong to a private club that bordered the game lands up there, and I'm still on the waiting list. Hopefully next year I can get back in. When I went away for college, I wasn't really focused on deer hunting as much, and I was focused on chasing other kinds of tails. So I kind of lost my membership. So I've been trying to get back in there. You know what I mean?
Didn't we all?
But yeah, but that that piece of ground up there has always been kind of sacred to me and my dad's side of the family. So I decided to head up there. I haven't been up there in a handful of years, but I decided to head up there and just give it a shot on some of the public ground that I've been before. And I actually took my mountain bike up with me because I knew there's a bunch of logging roads that I can get out there a lot faster and fairly quiet if I did that and cover some ground. So I took my mountain bike. And my grandfather's game cart, and I'm pedaling and holding that cart behind me like a trailer, and I get out there a couple miles and, set everything down. And I'm getting set up like this is big woods now. This is big timber. So it's like a lot of old coal mine type property. Everything's really steep. A lot of mountain laurel, not a whole lot of big trees, a lot of like honeysuckles and kind of small trees, and you get your occasional patches of acorn. So
is that like
kind of visualize?
Is that like one of the patches they've done like timber stand improvement on or clear cuts or anything?
Yeah. Yep. And actually the logging road that I went out on from years ago, you could see it was like from when they used to coal mine out there. They created these stripping banks and like these swales to kind of keep water off of that road for access.
Yeah.
And the good part about it is like all the water that runs off those roads comes down to this where this road kind of dissipates into the rest of the mountain, and it kind of created like this swamp. So all this water from the mountain collects in these swales, runs down into this and creates a swamp-like area, which has been like an unbelievable deer habitat over the years.
Nice.
And historically has really produced right around the end of October, early November. So I knew right off the bat that that's kind of like where my game plan was and where I wanted to go. I didn't have an idea of what tree exactly or anything like that. Like I said, I haven't been there in a handful of years, but I knew that just off of that trail up to my right, there was these two shelves, and up on the top of these shelves used to be this old man-made ground blind that me and my grandfather called the nest. And it was like this, just a bunch of, I guess different public hunters over the years had just grabbed logs and kind of stacked them together and created this man-made ground blind. There were still a couple of logs there actually after all these years, but in there, I knew that was like in the thick of like a bedding area. It was like really, really thick laurel. You have to actually crawl for the most part on your hands and knees up the side of this thing to get underneath the laurel that's all wound together. And then once you reach the top, it opens up and there's like just a small handful of trees. And then you get like those like ferns, that are kind of across. So it's like really, it's ideal for bow shooting because there's not a lot of limb trimming.
That kind of like a pinch point where it would funnel the deer through? Or?
Yeah, so that swamp that I was describing before is at the bottom of these hills. And so the top of these hills is this thick laurel. So typically, we've always, on deer drives on years past, we've always walked through there, and that's where we would push them out because they were always bedded up on those ridges. So I climbed up those stripping banks. And this is like, what the hell time was it? It was still dark yet. I probably got to that hill right around 5:45, something like that. So it was just before gray light. And I'm climbing up with my red lamp on. I'm getting hung up in all kinds of shit. I have my backpack on, my bow strapped to my backpack. I'm all sweated up from my bike ride in. I'm climbing up this hill. And as soon as I crest the first hill, I'm on my hands and knees, remember? I could like smell, like I get like a musty whiff, right? So I take off my red light and I put on my regular flashlight, and I look directly to my left as this huge tabletop scrape, and it smells like fresh. I just so happened to crawl like right into this thing, right? damn near put my hand in it when I'm crawling up this hill. So I'm like, all right, so obviously this place is still hot, and so I got to figure this out real quick. So I decided to stay on that flat instead of going to that second tier. So I walk out another 20, 30 yards away from the scrape because I didn't want to be right on the scrape. I found, a decent sized tree, start setting my sticks up, and I get my first stick up. Now I'm using the tethered saddle, so that paints the picture a little bit better. I get my first stick up. I'm about to put my second stick up, and I hear a deer blow at me, and I'm like, fuck. So like I'm sitting tight, and I'm like, man, what do I do? So I hop back down, I knock an arrow, I pull up my grunt tube, I throw a grunt out, made some noise, made some noise on the ground just from shit that I picked up off of YouTube watching a hunting public. I never did that before, but I decided to give it a shot.
Yeah, makes sense, really.
So yeah, and I didn't hear anything back. I waited like 20 minutes, didn't hear shit, right? And now it's gray light, so I could see pretty good. I don't need my flashlight anymore. So I hop back up, climbing back up. I get my third rung on. I'm about to put my fourth rung on, and I hear like a twig break. So I stop, and I'm trying to be as quiet as possible. And I look over to my left, about 25 yards out. I see a body, and the head is completely consumed in laurel bushes, so I can't see what it is. And the deer is like stomping at me and shit. And next thing you know, he starts moving his head, and I can see, okay, I saw a little bit of bone. It's a buck, right? So I'm like, oh shit. So now what do I do? Now I'm stuck. Now picture this, right? I'm not even tied off yet. I'm sitting in my like climbing setup. I have one of my ladder sticks in my hand. My bow's on the ground, right? So I'm like, what the fuck do I do? So I'm thinking about climbing back down. So I said, screw it. So I actually took my last stick and I threw it down, and it made a shit ton of racket going through the laurels down onto the ground. The buck didn't move. It was wild. And so I start hoisting my bow back up. I get it all the way up the tree. I knock an arrow. I clip my release in, and I'm about to put pressure on it to like draw to see if maybe like if when I draw, maybe he'll take a step out or something, so I can get a look at him before I touch off. And
how far was
right
he at
as
that
I'm
point?
putting pressure on it, he's still at 25 yards. He has not moved. He is deadlocked at that spot. He was just kind of stomping his feet and moving his head around in the brush a little bit. As soon as I put pressure on a string to draw, I hear a deer blow behind me. So the mistake that I made in setting up my spot in the dark was not going to the second tier. I was at the first tier, so I'm eye level with the second tier.
Yeah,
if you could picture that. So I look over my right shoulder, and there's a doe. It must be his girlfriend or whatever, and she's totally got me pinned. So I'm totally boned, right? So I look back over my left shoulder towards the buck, and he turns, does a 180, and bolts out of there. And he was actually a lot bigger than the 8-pointer that I ended up shooting.
No shit.
So that was disappointing, but it was a cool encounter though. So after I get my shit finally all set up and I settled down a little bit, probably about a half an hour went by, I could see more movement up on top of that second tier. So I bring the grunt tube out and I start grunting, and next thing you know, I could hear grunting and shit up on that second tier. And it's so thick, I could just see bodies and legs. I can't really make out what anything is up there.
Yeah.
So I'm watching about 45 yards out. I could see antlers moving through the laurel bush. And I pick my binoculars up and I'm like, man, that's a really nice buck. This one here was a tall, real tight, but real tall 10-pointer, like perfect, beautiful. It looked like flames coming out of his head. And, so I grunt at him again. He stops. He's looking. He's doing that like head bobbing thing where they're like checking you out, trying to figure out where the hell that noise is coming from. And I'm like, all right, this is gonna happen. I'm gonna get him to come in, right? So as I'm watching this deer for the longest time, I'm so focused and zoned in on this buck, and I'm so ready now because all my shit's finally set up. I feel like it's gonna happen. I'm not paying attention to anything like to my left. Like kind of behind me, but to my left. And a little spike buck picks me out of the tree. Same deal, blows at me. So now I'm thinking to myself, what the hell am I doing wrong? Like, I must not be in the right kind of cover. Maybe if I was up on that second tier, maybe I wouldn't be maybe I wouldn't stand out so much when they're coming off that bank, And So he picks me out. That buck busts out of there. The whole morning's like kind of seems like it shot to hell, right? But it was a lot of fun. So I'm texting my buddies. This is right around like 10 o'clock now at this point, right? This is going on for like ever.
Yeah.
So I'm texting my two buddies and I'm telling them exactly what happened to me this whole morning. And I'm like, this big long paragraph text message. And I'm in the middle of texting it and I hear a twig break. So I look up and I could see antlers, I could see body moving to my left. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. One of these bucks came back or another buck, right? So I'm like, this is unbelievable. So I quick put my phone away in my jacket pocket. I clip into the bow. I get my knees settled up on the tree and get locked in. And he's coming perfectly to my left, which is exactly how I set up and I anticipated them to come. And he's coming right down the trail, working right toward that scrape that I found when I first came in. And I could see on the left side, he's got a nice beam with 3 points, legal buck. And so at this point, I'm just like locked and loaded. So I draw back on him because he's behind thick laurel. I'm waiting for him to come to the opening, and naturally they stop and play that game, which feels like an hour, but it was probably only like a minute. So I let down once. He starts to move again. He's like bobbing his head and he's walking again. So I get another draw again. Now he actually moves into an opening. And as soon as he picks his left foot up to kind of take another step, I touched off and sent one right. I mean, it was a beautiful shot, 25 yards. He was like, I looked like he was perfectly broadside, but he was actually slightly quartered away after I go back and, looked at the whole thing.
Yeah.
But the arrow blew right through him. And what was crazy is that when I touched off, that arrow zipped through him so fast that like when I let the bow, like when I followed through when I let my pin down, my luminoc was right where my pin was.
Nice.
So my initial thought was that I missed him, right? And the deer does a 180, takes two big bounds and kind of just stands there. And then he kind of like did like he was trying to take a deep breath, and then I could just see everything spraying out of him. Nice. And then he went to go take a step, and his ass just hit the ground, and he just barrel rolled, and that was it. It was like, it was unbelievable. As Rupp Daniel says, he didn't go 20.
Didn't go 20. Mine didn't either, because I fucking spined him. He dropped right in his tracks.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
What are you shooting for arrow broadhead?
So my arrow, which I got it right here, I can show it to you. This is the actual arrow. This actually worked out nicely. So this is a 300 spine full metal jacket. I got the 4-fletch configuration with the AE Max Stealth vanes. I'm using it's also sorts of gnarly still, but this is a Rage tri-pan, the no collar, so you don't need a collar. They just kind of like snap together, which is kind of nice. And the arrow and everything's still intact. It's still shootable. I spin tested it, so the thing's still square. I will say about the Rages though that these are pretty much disposable broadheads. They open one hell of a hole and they shoot accurate, but it's bent. I probably can't shoot it again, which is disappointing. But
when I was on the way down from my hunt the morning I killed my buck, I have both fixed blade and expandables in my quiver, and I keep on like going back and forth to like how far of a shot I think I can make. So like, if I'm hunting a field edge, I throw my expandable on. If I'm hunting in the woods where it's tight, I'm throwing my fixed blade on. And I'm like on the way down there listening to I think it was a Working Class Bow Hunter, their 400 episode, and they were doing like a round table, like going around and having everybody pick between expandable and fixed blade. I think it was Clint, and he was like, if you hit him between the shoulder and the nuts, it's dead with an expandable. he was like, as long as you're smart about it, he was like, if you know you made a shit shot, leave him. But he was like, it'll kill him. He was like, sure as shit, it'll kill him. So on the way down there, I was like, you know what? I got up in the stand and went to knock an arrow, and I'm like, I'm going with what Clint said today. So I put the expandable on, and that thing, I was using Schwackers this year because I've always heard decent things about them. And I've done rage, and whether it was me or, my shots or whatever, but I feel like I've had problems with them. And that was earlier on in rage. I know they got a lot of different models now, so maybe I'd feel a little better trying them again. When they work great, they work great, but I feel like I've had them not work great. So I kind of got away from them. Last year we did that total archery challenge, and I didn't want to be wasting good arrows. So I went and bought a bunch of freaking just cheap ass, I think they're Victory Archery, like their cheapest model arrow. I know they have good arrows, but I bought their cheap ones. And I was using dead ringer broadheads that were probably way the fuck too big. I mean, they were 2-inch cut, like giant broadhead. And I shot that buck on the first Friday last season, and it should have been a pass through, and it wasn't. And if it was a pass through, I would have known that deer was probably dead that night. And I waited till morning, and he got eaten up by the coyotes. So this year I was like, I'm not screwing around. I'm getting FMJs. We're going to get, I tried the Schwacker, and I got the G5 fixed blade, and them fucking things are sharp out of the package. I mean, you talk about a sharp broadhead, you freaking pull them things out of the package, you nick your finger on them and you're cutting your freaking finger.
Yeah.
Not a lot of broadheads come out of the package like that, but
yeah, I'm definitely in the market to try some new broadheads next year. I mean, rage has always done good for me. I mean, knock on wood, I haven't lost a buck yet with a rage. I've actually lost a buck with one of my Muzzy Trocars, which in my quiver right now, I do have fixed blade as well. I have the Muzzy Trocars, just because they tune really well for my arrow setup. They shoot exactly where my pin goes, but I'm definitely in the market to try some new broadheads.
I think my next one's going to be with the fixed blade, just because now I got one with the Swacker. And I mean, it was a tough shot. I went through bone. It twisted the broadhead up. But I mean, I think if I was shooting the arrow setup I was shooting last year, I don't think I would have punched through as far as I did with that FMJ. And that Swacker's not a big broadhead. So when that hit it,
how heavy is your whole setup? Do you know?
I have no idea, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay. Right.
I got the 5mm FMJs. It's 100 grade broadhead. I'm not sure what it all weighs out at, but
if your arrows is like right around 28, 29 inches, you're probably right around that 500 mark, if I had to guess.
That's kind of what I figured. And talking with the guy there at the archery shop, I told him I wanted to be heavier. I told him what I used last year and that I wanted to be heavier. And he said definitely, what he's selling for what he feels is the right arrow for deer hunting is that FMJ. So he was like, this will give you the weight you want, and, it's durable. And so I don't think I would have had the penetration that I had if I didn't switch to those arrows. And that broadhead, it kind of would have been interesting to see if I'd have hit him with a fixed blade, if it would have gone through the chest or not. But I hit, and it went down in. I mean, it punched the lung. And when he was flipping and flopping down the hill, he snapped the arrow, and that freaking thing was just tearing him up in his vitals. So he was done in under a minute. But
nice.
I don't think if I shot the arrow I was shooting last year, I would have had the penetration. I would have been, spined him. Lucky if I caught the artery, and then I probably would have been trying to get another arrow in him. And I tried to get down quick to go get another arrow in him, because I've seen that shit before when you spine a deer and they just live. So I was trying to get down quick to go get another arrow in him. By the time I got to the base of the tree, he was dead. I was like, oh, that's perfect.
Yeah. I've had a scenario where I've spined a deer like that before, and it turns pretty barbaric pretty quick.
Yeah, I hate it. Absolutely hate it.
Yeah. So luckily he died pretty quick for you, it seems like. So that worked out.
So you shot that deer at like 10 something?
Yeah, it was like 10:05. I think exactly, because I was just texting my buddies and I had looked at the clock. So yeah, 10:05 is what is pretty much the exact time of death. I put on the death certificate 10:05.
Yeah, because I don't know what it was like down there Saturday morning, but it was like no wind, like probably 35 degrees, just crunchy, loud, cold. But we didn't see shit moving. So
in my hometown, it was like 38, 39 degrees and like 7 mile per hour winds, but I was another hour and a half north. So I remember checking the temperature in my truck told me it was 32, but it felt colder than that. It felt like in mid 20s, and it was dead calm. There was no wind, crunchy as all hell.
Oh yeah.
I thought for sure I wasn't going to see shit, but it turned out to be a hell of a day. I think the rut was just in heavy. They were responding to the grunt call. I made a good decision on really pressing the envelope and getting in their bedroom. And just being aggressive, I guess. That was like what I'd chalk it up to.
Yeah, I think maybe what we were looking at is, I think the bucks are really, like we've seen on trail camera, there'll be a hot doe and there'll be 5-6 bucks in one area. And I always have a doe group come through the spot that I was sitting on Saturday morning and nothing came through. There was one deer when I was on my way in. I heard it bound off, and I got up in my stand, pulled my bow up. By the time I got my bow on the hook and my safety harness all on and everything, that I could hear it walking back in, and it walked 15, 20 yards away, but it was too dark to see what was on its head. It was one deer by itself. Sounded like it had a pretty good walk to him, but you can kind of tell when you have that kind of buck that's on a mission where he's just got that stomp going through the woods.
Yeah, without a doubt. I thought for sure it was going to happen on that first buck that I saw that morning. Just because I was getting away with so much. He was just so pissed off that I was in his bedroom. I thought for sure he was going to come out and give me an opportunity, but it all worked out anyhow. So, I couldn't be happier. Here he is. This is him in all his glory,
Oh, nice.
And all 103 inches of him. I'm just guessing, but I'm assuming that's probably what it is.
Hey man, it is what it is.
So your standard. That's right. All bucks matter.
All bucks matter. Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely been a good season so far. And, that 24th, 25th weekend, that was, some guys were getting some action, but we weren't seeing much. And then it really seemed like this past weekend really kicked off. I mean, they were dropping like flies. So it'll be interesting to see what this weekend brings, because the weather's looking pretty damn warm here. I don't know what it's looking like there, but.
Yeah, we're 60s here. It doesn't look good.
No. But, they're going to be out there. If there's a hot doe, they'll be running around. So,
I will say that when I went and dropped one. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, if you're anywhere near a water source where there's deer bedding or, feed, to get near feed, water, bedding for this weekend, they're going to have water. If they're rutting and running, they're going to need a drink here at some point. So I feel like if you got somewhere that doesn't have a ton of water and you can find a little water, I got to believe that would be a good spot to be this weekend.
Yep. Yeah. If I was going to tell my dad, give my dad my location, if he didn't collect on the same day, but because to your point, like where that swamp was, there's your water source, and then 2 ridges up, there's their bedding. I mean, it was like, it's a great spot. I would definitely plan on going back.
Yeah, for sure.
I haven't had an encounter with 4 bucks in a day in probably 4 or 5 years. So
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that's the other part of the story, is that I initially, as soon as I made the kill, the first person I called was my wife. Naturally, she doesn't answer. So, anytime you need something, it's like, do you even have a phone? But yeah, it's fine. So, then the next person I tried calling is my dad. He doesn't answer. So then the next person I call is my stepdad. He finally answers. And so I explained the story. We're all happy and stuff. I'm trying to call my dad. I don't end up getting a hold of my dad till probably 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon that day. And come to find out, he didn't have any service, and he had downed a buck of his own, so he was working on getting him out of the woods. So I met up with him the next day on Sunday for a picture and a little story session. So, but that was the first time him and I have doubled up since ever, since I've been hunting, since I've been 12. So
yeah,
it was a pretty special day.
Yeah, that's freaking awesome. I think I've only done it once with my dad. He shot one in the morning. I went and helped him. I went and got him back on stand, and then I shot one in the afternoon. Both good. I think mine was a 9, his was an 8, so it was both good bucks. But I think that's the only time I've ever done that.
Yep. I got to tell you, I was pretty, even though he's not my best deer, I was still pretty emotional because being able to come home and take a picture with my boy, with him, like my dad did with me, or both my dads did with me, I should say. And, it hit me all at one time. So I love this shit. I live for this.
So, what's funny to me is last year, I found out I was having a kid and I didn't tell anybody because it was so early, but I knew it was my last hunting season with no kid. Through gun season, I knew that. So I was just literally fucking every second I wasn't working, I was hunting. And I mean, I was putting in hours and hunting hard and moving, during gun season, I'm mostly still hunting. And I just fucking did it weekend after weekend and night after night. And that last Sunday, we had enough snow that you couldn't drive to the top of the hill. And it seemed like it was that way every weekend. We'd get enough snow that you couldn't make it to the top of the hill, but it would happen like Friday into Saturday. So it was like all week long, you could have driven to the top of the hill on the 4-wheeler, but Friday into Saturday, you get snow and you had to walk all the way to the top of the hill. So I'd been doing it every single weekend. And the last weekend, the weather flipped on Friday into Saturday. And then Saturday into Sunday, we really got dumped on. And I drove the 4-wheeler to the base of the hill, hiked up the hill. I'm like, what's one last day? Got to do it. So I hike up the hill. And of course, I didn't take any heavy shit with me because I didn't want to be packing around a big pack. So I just wore my catalyst system, the First Light stuff. And I'm normally good to like 30 degrees in that for a couple hours, if you're sitting. But I get up in the tree stand and I'm right on the top of the hill. And my buddy Adam had gone all the way back through the valley and up the backside of the hill, and he was bringing the front crest across to me. So I'm kind of watching out his way, and it's just lake effect band after lake effect band and just getting freaking dumped on. And I figured he had to be close to making it to me, but I looked back to the north. He was coming from the south, and I looked back to the north. And I'm like, that seems like an awful brown spot standing there, sticking out from the back of that tree. And then it started moving, and I'm like, holy shit, it's a deer. And I freaking get my gun, and I swing it around and pull it up on it because I didn't care, doe or buck I was shooting. And I'm waiting on the one side of the tree for it, and it's not popping out. And I'm like, what the hell? So I freaking bring the gun up, come around the other side of the tree, and lower the gun down. I'm like, holy shit, he's walking right at me. And he freaking walked into, I think, 35 yards and stopped right in an opening. And I just dumped him right in his tracks. And it was a beautiful 1.5 8-point. But I was like, I just did not give a shit, I held that buck tag through the entire season because I said, I got a nice one with my bow. I'm going to fill the freezer with those. If I don't get a buck, I don't get a buck. But when I knew in the last few weeks of season that I had a kid on the way, I was like, I'm not going to be able to hunt like I normally hunt anymore. And nobody knew. And I didn't even tell anybody after I shot the deer. But I literally shot the deer. He dropped in his tracks. I could have thrown the gun out of the tree. I was so happy. I was like, Jesus Christ. I'm like, how freaking awesome is that? I made it happen on the last day. I've been hunting my ass off trying to make this happen. And then even this year, it's making sacrifices. You don't get to hunt like you used to hunt and trying to figure out when to go. And, I just happened to pull the trigger at the right time. Last week I was off all week. I only hunted twice. So I just hit it absolutely right. And I'm like, I can't believe that happened. It's just everything lined up right. And it does. And, and then she's like, you want me to bring Jay down? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So, she brings him down. We're taking pictures in front of the cabin. I'm like, this is fantastic. Just a whole nother element to it.
Definitely. It doesn't get much better than that. Now we can both look back and see like why our dads were so adamant about getting pictures and getting us out there. I mean, it's just, there's nothing like it. I feel like if you're not experienced in some part of this, you're missing out, man. This sport is unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a complete lifestyle, really. I mean, and there's a lot of people that are getting into it now that are later in life that have never done it and don't have a family background in it. But if you have a family background in it, I mean, it is a freaking way of life. I mean, some people just don't understand it, that, it's hunting season. It's hunting season. Like that's what you do now.
Yep.
And it's not about just killing animals. I mean, it's 10 times more than that. So
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely camaraderie and just hard work and dedication and all those things. It really it toughens you up too. You know, there's many mornings I remember I've been out with my old man when I was young, like before I could even carry 8, 9 years old, and you know, my dad used to bring candles with him because when I would get cold, he would light the candle and I would hover my hands around it to try to like keep warm. And then, you know, in the middle of a storm while we're sitting out there trying to, you know, just kill it, you know, kill a deer. And it's like, people don't understand that kind of shit. If you haven't, like you said, if you don't have a background in it or you haven't been raised doing it, it's it's hard to explain, you know.
Our dad's trick was Tootsie Rolls. He used to take a pocket full of Tootsie Rolls, and if you started making noise, he'd slip you a Tootsie Roll.
yeah.
Just all the funny little things, you know.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the days where, you know, he's tall enough and big enough to walk around with me, and I can teach him all those little tricks where, you know, you step or I step, and when I stop, you stop. All those little things about moving around in the woods. I'm gonna eat that stuff up. It's gonna be great. Yeah,
I've hunted with a lot of people that didn't grow up in the woods, and it's funny in how, you know, they just, you know, when you grow up in the woods with somebody that's been in the woods their whole life, it's like a totally different sense of movement through the woods. And then when you're with somebody that's never done it before, it's like, you know, they got to be in front of you, or they're just smashing their feet on the ground, you know, or dragging their feet. And it's just like, it does make a hell of a difference if you just grow up doing it.
Are you guys getting a lot of people in public land up there? Is it getting crowded?
I haven't hunted a ton of it this year yet, so I'm not really sure how this year is. Normally it's really the first week of gun, it's slammed. And then after that, it's not bad. But this year may be a whole different beast. I'm not sure.
Same thing here. I mean, all the game lands that I've been on this year, I've seen, you know, 1-2 trucks tops other than my own. Yeah. So archery's never really slammed, but it seemed we sold a lot of licenses this year, a shit ton of doe licenses. I mean, just for the WMU where I live, I think we sold 70,000. So, I mean, shit ton of licenses out there. And between Joe Rogan and John Dudley and all these, and Cameron Haynes and all these other big guys, you know, everybody's listening to this podcast and they go out there and buy a crossbow and they think they're, you know, you know, the next John Dudley, which more power to them. But I just, you know, I was listening to the Working Class Bow Hunter podcast actually today at work, and they were talking about just that. The one guy almost got shot by a crossbow hunter that was trespassing, and it was just like unbelievable. So, well,
he was sitting on his property, on the property he had permission on, but he was about to shoot over the property line at the movement, is what it was.
Right. Okay, that was it.
Yeah. Yep. And he was like,
unbelievable.
If you want some entertainment, go listen to that, because he had quite the rant, and it was pretty humorous. And I don't think there's anything wrong about the rant. You know, I think he was spot on. So
100%.
Yeah,
I'm all for more people getting involved with hunting and everything. It's a great sport, but I just encourage everybody to do it right and do it safely. That's all.
Yeah, and if you need some help, ask for it.
That's right. You could listen in the Pertnear podcast. You know, I mean, you guys are always getting good, helpful hints and tips.
We're pretty close to knowing what we're doing.
Pertnear.
Hey, cheers on that one for the success with the Bucks, and having our first child and catching up here a little bit. It's been fun, and I got another one I got to hop on here, so we'll have to cut this off. But I enjoyed your story, and I enjoyed catching up with you. And if you make it up this way at all, shoot me a text or a message. Let me know. I'll try to get hooked up with you.
Definitely. I'll coordinate with Billy. I'm definitely planning on making a trip this year and hopefully thereafter. So
yeah,
keep feeding him, brother.
You too, man. Good luck the rest of the season.
Yep, you too. I'll see you.
Yeah. All right. I'm here with Nate Kennedy tonight. We have hooked up with you before. I know Billy did a podcast with you about some of the other stuff you got going on. And you connected with a nice buck this weekend. I believe was that Saturday or that was Sunday?
Sunday morning, yep.
Yeah, because I remember I saw your picture and I texted you and I'm like, more power to you. I wasn't going out in this shit.
Yep. Yeah, I think I was talking to either you or Billy or both. Still in the stand. I sat there for a while.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I have my account and then Pertnear Outdoors account. And I think I'd seen a message on the Pertnear between you and Billy. And I'm like, oh, some bitch, you shot one. Or, we posted you on the story because you were like, just had a couple celebratory Snickers.
I
did. I was like, oh, yeah. I'm like, Nate got one. So I sent you a message.
Yeah,
but
I never really know who I'm talking to on there. I usually just say boys because I'm like, yeah, it's one of them guys.
I normally define if it's me or not. But it's funny because there's a ton of shit that like Billy will be talking to somebody and I just want to throw in some wise ass shit, but it would make no sense because nobody would know that it's me. So I kind of just stay out of the messages unless I need to coordinate something with somebody. But
yeah, let him do the legwork.
So yeah. Oh, he does a majority of the legwork around here. But I'm trying to help him out with the podcast and stuff now. It's definitely, I don't know how the hell he does it with 2 kids and a full-time job to do all the podcast shit that he does. His wife's got to be just loving him all the time.
I'm sure. How could you not?
Right. I just went upstairs and I was like, all right, we'll get Jay to bed. And she was like, so you're all done? I'm like, no, that was just the first one. She's like, are you serious? I'm like, sorry, got long-winded.
You tell her I said I'm sorry.
She's like, who are you doing it with? I'm like, Nate. She's like, oh, yeah, he's a good kid. I'm like, yeah. So let's get into your story a little bit here. I mean, maybe set it up a little bit from the beginning of the season, if this was somewhere that you've been hunting or something you've been scouting or whether it's just something you stumbled across.
Yeah, it's actually all brand new to me. I've been working out here in the Finger Lakes for going on 2 years, year and a half, 2 years now. But last year I was still living in Syracuse and hunting out there and hunting up north. I'm from the North Country, all the way up. And so this year we moved to Geneva and spent the summer scouting public and found a lot of nice public out here. Really kind of wanted to secure myself a little sliver of private somewhere.
Yeah.
So I tried pretty hard to kind of hunt something down. And I ended up with a couple really small, like super small parcels down here right in between the lakes. And this particular property is it's like 18 acres total, but 14 of them are a giant goldenrod field alongside a pretty big highway. So it's a 4 acre, it's a 4 acre woodlot. It's really cool. It's surrounded by, there's a big alfalfa field, 2 big cornfields, really big soybean field, and then a giant woodlot adjacent to it. But this particular, like the spot I can see, I can look through it. I can see all the way to the other side of where I can hunt. And so that was interesting, just kind of diving into that piece of property and doing a little bit of, I got permission on it and doing the scouting, and I hung a couple cameras. But it was weird before, because it's weird to try to be so strategic on 4 acres.
Oh yeah.
Because I was like, well, I could hunt this side or I could hunt that side.
Maybe I can set up for east wind or a west wind.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I was like, well, I've got a bunch of public. There's a ton of public out here, and I was like, and I've got this little honey hole, and I think the previous, it hadn't been hunted in a few years as far as I know. The guy that used to hunt it passed away a couple years ago, and his family's just kind of been hanging on to it, and they don't hunt, so it, just kind of happened the way it happened. But I had been told that he had shot some nice bucks there in the past, and the area that it's in, I think, is pretty well known. I've been told some of the local guys out here have been palling around with me on the internet a little bit, telling me that there's some good deer close by. And this summer I had people tell me that there were, some nice bucks being seen in velvet and all that. I just kind of was all new, totally new piece of property, and hunting out here in the Finger Lakes was my first season doing it. So
yeah, I know we had messaged a little bit about state land there back earlier in the summer. I was hoping to get hooked up with you and do some hiking, but summer slipped away and having a kid, and I didn't do much hiking this summer. So
all of a sudden it's November. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, so actually, like, I don't know if you know that, like, Finger Lakes Land Trust,
Yeah.
they have a program, and last year we tried to get into it and we didn't get into it. And this year I was like, shits and giggles, I'm going to throw in again. There's 2 spots close to camp. So I threw in again and I got selected for the one piece, and it actually borders a lot of the Stid Hill stuff down in Naples. And I went down there. I think it was the second weekend of archery. I went down there, and the one piece I think is heavily hunted because they got like however many permits they allow. I think it's pretty much all the guys out of the camp above it, from what this guy was telling me.
Yep.
And he was like, yeah, we just give them all permits and they kind of police it and watch it, and, you know, they hunt the top side of it. But there's the other piece that's on the north side, that there's a property that runs up in between, so there's nothing that connects it technically. So there's like state land on the one side and then private property. And then this other chunk sits to the north, and it's all side hill.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time trying to figure out where to park at the bottom to even go into it, because it's like a cliff. And I picked like the last gully on the property line, and just, I was like, I'm gonna have to try to figure out how to get up through there. And it was a long ways up. And once you got up top, it was freaking beautiful. Like, if you could access it from the top, it would be awesome, but you can't. So
I put in for that land trust. There's a little small archery only spot not far from where I shot that deer. And I got a very nice, very kind rejection letter this year. So better luck next year.
Stay after it, because it, you know, you have to meet up with the guy that runs the program in Ithaca. You have to meet up with him to do orientation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're really just trying to meet you and feel you out and see what kind of guy they got hunting their property.
Fair enough.
Blah, blah. And he was a great guy. And I think it's a good program. And he kind of told me, once you're in it, you know, as long as you follow the rules and regulations and blah, 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 you know, you're good to go. And if you want to, you know, if a spot opens up at a different property and you want to jump over to a different property, you can. And this sounds like a really good program. Like, we were in a nature conservancy one, and you had to like reserve reservations and stuff like that. And, you know, if you had more volunteer hours, then you'd get more points to, like, you know, so I see their system too. But this system seems nice. It seems like more of a hand-picked crew to go on some of these places. So it's cool. And I think if you stay on it, you'll get in.
Sweet. That's a nice little spot.
Yeah, definitely. So were you hunting that small piece that you got permission on?
Yeah, I actually never, that's the funny thing. I hunted one morning on some of the public that I scouted. And other than that, I hunted that piece. I think it was like my 11th sit there that I shot that deer, something like that, 10, 11 sits. So I actually hunted it more than I kind of thought I was going to be selective. You know how that goes. I was like, oh, I'm going to pick the best days. And it's just good on like a south wind. And there's a lot of south winds. And where I'm from, I love it to death. I'm from like St. Lawrence County all the way up right on the river. And there's just not a lot of deer, you know what I mean? It's great hunting, and it's an awesome area. But like this season, like I said, I think it was my 11th sit there. I never sat there without seeing a deer. Right. And I only had 1 or 2 hunts where I didn't see a buck. And for me, that's like watching TV.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So I was just season. I mean, I was getting I didn't get anything big on trail camera, but I was getting bucks on camera all summer and into the early fall. And then every time I was out there, I was seeing bucks and does. And for me to sit in a tree stand and see 2, 3, 4 bucks in a hunt is like, I mean, I've literally never had that before. So that was it just kind of kept me going back there. And the wind was good. Until the day before I shot that deer, I didn't blow out any deer. It was cool. It was easy to hunt. It's easy to sneak in, and it's small enough that the impact, I'm basically hunting one corner of it, you know? So, I ended up there the last few weeks. I've been sneaking in there quite a bit.
Is it pretty close to your house?
Yeah, it's like 25 minutes, down toward like Ovid.
Yep.
It's not too far.
I worked out that way a lot. I do like Seneca Falls, Romulus.
Oh yeah.
Union Springs. You know, I hit all those guys out there. So I'm driving through Geneva quite a bit. But
Oh yeah.
I always, looking at all that farmland and shit out there, I'm like, God, this looks like good hunting country.
It was great. I mean, the other thing too that was new for me, like really, really new for me, is like buck to doe ratios.
Yeah.
Like I'm seeing way more bucks than does, like more. Like that for me, that's just nuts. I might see a doe or two. I was hoping to shoot a doe, and I was like waiting because I kept every doe that I thought was coming in ended up being a button buck or a spike horn or a ton of little 4 points, and I passed a decent little 6, which for me was pretty big deal. That was last week, and I'm glad I did. But
hey,
it was tough to do.
You're hunting south of the thruway now. You can wait a little bit.
I know. I'm glad I did. That's the first thing my dad texted me. It's a good thing you passed that 6 point.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's funny because like we were up north hunting, and we don't normally do well up there for deer.
Right.
We do the early muzzleloader. My in-laws and my uncle's got a camp right up the hill from my in-laws. And we kind of started a tradition 3-4 years ago. And I've hunted up there for probably the last 10 years, but not, I'm not hunting every weekend. I'm doing like 1 weekend a year up there. And every year I think I have the deer figured out and they do something different. And it is a total different style of hunting up that way. And this year we got 2 does, which the one was my first year up in the North Country. So that was
Nice.
Cool. And then my uncle, we had this freaking buck. We were calling him Forky, obviously, because he was a little tiny 4-point. But he was on the trail camera like all day long, every single day. And my uncle's like, somebody needs to shoot this damn thing so it quits taking pictures of him. And my other uncle was sitting in the tree stand in the morning. I had to go get my doe because it was quartering 2 and I hit her a little back. So I left her overnight. But he was sitting in his tree stand. It was like perfect morning. It was like 30 degrees. Sun was shining, blue skies, and he turns around and he sees this buck coming at him, and he's like, I didn't even pick my gun up. And then he was like, everything's running through your head. He's like, the rut's coming. I'd like to get a big buck with my bow. And then he was like, it just struck me. And he was like, out of nowhere, I was like, all of a sudden picking the gun up, cocking the hammer.
Yep.
He's like, I laid down this little 4-point, and he was like, man, it was just as good as any big buck I've killed. He was like, it was just awesome.
Yeah. My dad shot a first weekend in November last year. My dad shot a spike up in the mountains, and it was like, it was crazy day, crazy story, awesome hunt, great deer.
Right.
It was like spike, you know what I mean? It was just, that's the way it goes up there.
Well, that's what he was saying. He was like, my son,
here.
He was like, my son's here with me. He got a doe. He was like, you got a doe. He was like, Jesus. He was like, he goes, we were just having a hell of a weekend, and it was a perfect morning. Everything just lined up right. The mood struck. He was like, you know what? I ain't got to stress the rest of archery season now. I'm done.
Exactly.
So,
yep. Love it.
Yeah. So set me up there on your Sunday morning hunt.
Yeah. I had actually it's gun season now up north. So I hunted the 24th, 25th weekend up there. And was planning to come back. I travel, even though I live down here now, I travel up there every weekend. We have a big family camp and do that whole thing. So it's a every weekend thing. So I was really only planning to hunt weekdays down here. And we moved in May, and a good friend of mine helped me move. And so he was moving this weekend, and I didn't, I was like, hey, I said, you don't even have to ask, I said, I'm going to return the favor. And I said, I'll skip a weekend up north and I'll get a little hunting in down here. And that was kind of the only reason that I was even down here. But I hunted Monday and Tuesday last week, and right at dark both nights. I mean, I had been seeing small bucks and does, but right at dark both nights out in the cornfield, which is like 40 yards away from me that I can't hunt. It's a neighbor's property. It's right there, but I can't shoot across the line. Right at dark Monday and Tuesday night, this buck came out, and I could see in the dark, before I got down, that it was a nice deer. I knew it was a nice deer. I didn't know what it was the first couple times I saw it, but I knew it had, out past the ear, I knew it had a rack on it, and I got pretty excited. I ended up hunting those 2 days, and then I took a couple days off. I don't remember why. Weather, maybe rain. And then I went back in there, would have been Friday. And I saw him in daylight, at like 300 yards, I think 320 yards or something like that. And he just had, I mean, he was, biggest buck I've ever seen in my life,
boy.
And I was just, I was fired up, and he was with these does, and, I'm going, every little thing is running through my head, and I'm freaking out in this tree stand, praying that he's going to leave those does, and, darn well that he's not going to,
Right.
So it's like freaking out, I'm grunting to him, and he doesn't have a care in the world. So it's like the next day I'm like, I'm going to the nearest place and buying a rattle bag. And so I went to Walmart, and I got the little rattle bag from Walmart. So I went back in there Saturday morning. That was the day I was helping my buddy move, and Saturday morning I went in, and sure enough, first light, all these turkeys flew out into the field, all these deer dumped out into the field, and then suddenly the deer started taking off all over the place, and I looked, and there he was, just barreling through the field. The 6 point that I passed last week, right on him, just following him around, and they're just chasing does everywhere. And so that, I'm rattling my new rattle bag, and he just, he'd stop and look over at me and just laugh. He was just laughing at me.
Right.
He didn't, there was no way. And so I was freaking out, and I'm like, what am I going to do? And so I hunt till, I don't know, 10 a.m. or something like that. And I got to drive out to Syracuse and help my buddy move. So I did that. But while I was out there, I was telling him, like, freaking out, I don't know what to do about this deer. I'm like, he's like got does, and, he's not going to be around forever. And he's huge. And I'm just like, I got to kill this deer. And he's like, maybe you'll get him tomorrow, And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, well, if you get him tomorrow, give me a call. I'll drive out there. And so, yeah, I mean, I went, I've also had all these, I set 2 mock scrapes with cameras, and I've been getting, for the last week and a half, I've been getting all these young bucks just pounding this mock scrape, loving it. No pictures of him, but all these other bucks. Huh. So, they've been making scrapes and rubs around those mock scrapes. So that's been pretty cool. So I've been going in there trying to set up within shooting distance of those scrapes, and just praying that something brings that big deer by me. And, that was Saturday. I came back late Saturday night. That would have been Halloween. We had one trick-or-treater, and went to bed, and daylight savings, I was exhausted, and I was saying to Jess, I was just telling her, like, back in the day, I would have never been getting up the morning after Halloween,
hell no.
Especially daylight savings. But I did. I got up at 4 the next morning, and
I had many years of being hungover sitting in the tree stand.
Oh yeah,
on the morning after Halloween.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have even gone. I would have been asleep until noon.
I made bad decisions when I was that young.
But I got up and I went, and at 4 a.m. I was hauling down there, and I was like, trying to beef myself up, telling myself, like, today's the day. This is it. This is it.
Putting some good music on, or good podcast, just getting into it.
It's gonna happen. Today's the day. And I snuck in, got in there, got in my climber, and it was like first light, pocket full of Halloween candy, and literally first light, I mean 6:40 or whatever, no turkeys, no deer. I was texting my dad. It was super windy, and I was texting my dad, and he was up to camp, and he was like, yeah, they used to say that the deer won't move in the wind, and we were having that conversation. It was literally first thing in the morning, and I just happened to turn over my left shoulder and look out in that cornfield, and I saw a deer, and it was first deer, only deer, and it was him, and he was all by himself, and I could just see his horns coming across that cornfield. It was like, unlike all those other days, he was like by himself. He was closer to me. He was headed my way. So I freaked out, and I stood up. I was a wreck. I stood up.
Started some knee knocking.
Oh, bad. And the thing was, too, is like, I've got a summit climber, but I was in a crooked tree, with it.
Yeah.
And I'm big and I'm not nimble, you know? And
Hear ya.
so I'm all set up to shoot sitting down, and beautifully, you know, here's my shooting lane sitting down, and I'm great for that. And I'm like, I just hope he doesn't, you know, they don't come in behind me. If they do, I'll figure it out. Well, you know how that, you know how that goes. So
Yeah.
he was probably 80 yards out in that cornfield behind me. And I stood up and I grabbed my bow and I turned around, and I was nervous because I didn't really feel great standing in that spot facing that direction. And
Especially in the wind.
yeah, and it was real windy. And I was like, today's the day, you know. And I left the rattle bag because I had already thought the day before that he didn't really like that. But I grunted to him.
Maybe wore that out.
Yep. It was funny too because I had been calling more than usual because there were deer. There were way more bucks, and I was thinking about when you were telling the story, your deer. You were like talking about grunting. You were like, yeah, a couple burps and a couple big long ones, you know.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what I did. I just grunted a few times, and he picked his head up. And I was joking yesterday, saying that it was like he had thought to himself, I've been hearing you over here running your mouth for 5 days now, and I've been with those does, and now I'm done, and here I am, and I'm going to come in here and show you who's boss, you know?
Absolutely.
And, you know, just kind of like all the other stuff, just like on a video or something, he put his head down and heard that grunt and came hauling right in, and he came in to like the corner of the woodlot where I walk in, and he made a fresh scrape, tore up the ground like crazy. And then he walked in literally on the little path that I walked in on, beeline on my feet, you know, on my boot tracks. And I was a mess because until this point, every deer I had seen, which had been a ton, had all been on the neighbor, like all in that cornfield, nothing besides that 6-point, nothing on this property that I could shoot. And he like, when he stepped in the woodlot and he was like officially on that property, I was like, oh yes. And honestly, I like basically he walked, took a quick range of this log, and he walked by it, and I just pulled back and flung one, and and it was not pretty, and it was not what I thought that it was supposed, you know. It's like last year I shot my first deer with a bow, and I had been so measured and so practiced that it was like, okay, take my breath, and find my anchor, and take them, you know, and pause. And this year was like, freaking out and nervous wreck, basically just blacked out and flung an arrow at him.
Oh yeah.
And he ran off, and I turned around, hung my bow up, and sat down and texted my dad and said I just shot at that deer and missed him. And I texted Jess and I said I just missed that big buck. And I was just sick. I was like, I'm sick. I just missed that huge deer I've been watching for 5 days, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, my dad was like, well, you know, just sit tight, calm down, treat it like, you know, you took a shot at him. You don't know that you missed him. And I'm like, I missed him. I know I did. I blacked out. I didn't do anything I was supposed to do.
So did you actually see the arrow hit him or miss him, or?
Nope.
You were just assuming you missed.
25 yards, just flung one at him and was totally buck fever. It was like sure that I had goofed the whole thing.
So did he come in behind you, or did he end up coming around in front of you?
No, he was behind me. I had to like lean out behind the tree.
Okay.
It was not ideal, but it was, I mean, I had a great shot, you know what I mean? It was 25 yards wide open broadside, you know, it was perfect.
Did he stop or was he walking?
He was walking slow. I think you know, the way it set up, I mean, I don't know, but the way it was set up, I think he was going downwind of that grunt.
Gotcha.
You know, the way that he was circling around the tree, he was, you know, he was sneaking along, not really like super alert, definitely not looking at me or anything.
Right.
Pretty calm though, you know, but moving steady. I mean, he was moving steady, and I didn't stop him. I ranged that opening. I picked that opening, I drew, and I let it go. And I was positive that I missed him. Absolutely positive. I got the text messages that are like, I missed him. And, you know, my dad's like, calm down, you know, sit tight. You can get down and look for your arrow. And after a couple minutes of like, I mean, literally getting sick, I was real nervous. I just started I was like, okay, I should look for him, because it's only 4 acres.
Right.
He might be, I can see all the way over there. And so I pulled up my binoculars, and I was sitting down by then and just started scanning the woods, seeing if, because I was thinking if I did put a bad hit on him or something, maybe he's walking over there,
Right.
Whatever.
So,
I don't know,
So after you shot and he ran off, like, did you watch him run off fully, or did you just like shoot
I watched him
not
run.
pay attention, or what?
No, I
was
watched him. I watched him run until I couldn't see him anymore.
Okay.
And then I immediately turned around, and I just was like, that was not good. I was like, this is not
Right.
how that was supposed to go.
Yeah.
Um,
Could you tell when he ran off? Was he like tail down or tail up, or?
I didn't. I was blacked out with excitement and didn't pay any attention to any. Last year I was like, I saw him, he ran, and he started walking. This year it was like I shot at him, and that was it.
That's awesome.
But I sat there trying to catch my breath, and every couple minutes or a couple seconds probably just looking in the binoculars and trying to see if I could see him. I was thinking if I totally missed him, he didn't. I mean, he ran off, but it wasn't like he went nuts. He didn't jump up in the air, freak out or anything. So I was like, maybe he'll, he heard that grunt. Maybe he'll come back. Maybe I'll get a second chance at him. And
you never know this time of year.
Yeah, no doubt. And I just ended up seeing in the binoculars, I saw a little brown patch, and I went back to it, and I was like, no way. And he was just laying there 40 yards.
No way.
Dead. Yeah. And I watched him, making sure he wasn't going to get up.
Yeah.
And, he was stone dead. And
that's awesome.
Texted my dad, and I was like, oh my God, I got him. And he was like, well, you make sure. And I was like, I'm looking at him. I'm watching him. I can see him. I said he didn't go 50 yards,
Didn't go 20.
Didn't. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And that's when I broke out the Snickers bars. I thought maybe that would calm me down a little bit. I just was losing it, and I ended up sitting there. I sat there for like an hour and a half before I climbed down because
you gotta enjoy it a little,
Yep. Yeah.
So I mean, that's what was kind of shitty about my kill was I've never taken that shot before straight down, and it was slightly off the base of my tree, but I mean, you're shooting straight down. And when I spined him, it wasn't like, oh, I got a great shot on this deer. Holy crap. He ran off. I'm so excited. It was like, son of a bitch. God damn it.
Yeah.
It was like, now I'm running around trying to figure out how to get another arrow in him. And, luckily it wasn't any of that. Luckily I punched through and got lung, and he was dead. But, I did the same thing. I snuck down there in the brush, and I got right 10 yards away from him. I'm like, if he flinches, I'm shooting him again.
Right.
But, after like 2 minutes of standing there, I was like, he's dead. I take a picture of me holding my bow with an arrow knocked, and you couldn't see the horns because his head was upside down, but I sent a picture to Billy and Dad, and I'm like, Goofy's dead, man. I'm like, he's dead. And they're like, no way. I'm like, yeah, that's it. So I did the same thing. I'm like, well, all my shit's up in the tree. I'm like, I've stood here for 5-10 minutes. I'm like, he's dead. So, I went up in the tree and I made a couple phone calls and had a chew and hung out for a few minutes.
Right, exactly.
And enjoyed the morning, So
yeah, I was definitely up there on the phone, and I was telling my dad's like, well, what are you gonna do? I was like, well, I got a doe tag.
Yeah.
I planned to hunt till at least noon that day. It was at this time when I saw him dead, it was like 6:50.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it was.
Yeah.
It was barely even the morning yet.
Oh, I shot mine at like 8:30. I was drinking beer by 10 o'clock.
Yeah, I got home. So, we ended up getting home at 12:30, and that's what I said to Jess. I said this would have been exactly the time that I would have got home if I had hunted until noon.
Right. So where'd you end up hitting them?
Oh, I smoked them. No, it was. I said it must have been like muscle memory and whatnot from practicing all summer, but it was just perfect double lung, just right where you'd want it, and both lungs right just back from the shoulder. Absolutely awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
I
just piled up.
I've kind of found that like the longer I've been into archery, the more you get it into your head of like all the stuff you're hearing on podcasts and all of this and all of that, and you mess up a shot and then you get head game. And like, dude, when I was younger and first into archery, and I never thought any of that shit. But now that I'm older and I've had problems and I've wounded deer and, you know, now it's like a giant head game that it's like I'm punching the trigger, I'm jerking my shots. It's like, so to be honest with you, this year, I didn't really feel like I was going to be very comfortable shooting over 15, 20 yards. And with him standing right underneath me, I'm like, I know I aim low, you know?
Right. Yeah, I would have missed it.
And really, it was perfect because punched it right into his lungs. But it's one of those deals where when you get to that point and you know that you're pulling shots or jumping shots or making bad mistakes or making rush shots, it's like, just slow down, get back to your roots, quit worrying about the shit you're hearing online. You know, you can shoot your damn bow. Because what kills me is like, we've done all these archery shoots, you know, like we went to the Total Archery Challenge. There was 4 of us that went. Me and Brian were down to the last target, you know, between the 2 of us. We were kind of having a shoot off. And it was in my head at the end of the freaking thing. It was a 15, 20 yard target, you know, just stick it behind the shoulder and shoot. And I fucking sent an arrow off the edge of the hill. And Brian's standing there laughing at me like, well, if you love something, let it free. And I'm like, fuck you. The target's freaking 15, 20 yards. I ought to be smoking it. But like, it comes down to like when you really start thinking about it. It's like, just stop thinking about it and shoot the target. You know, we're shooting. And that's before that, we were shooting 60 yards through the woods in between a split crotch tree, you know, and I'm freaking sending it right through there, hitting the freaking 10 ring. So it's like, you know, as soon as it gets to that point where it's like, it's a game time, you got to make this shot, then it gets all in your head. And it's like, you just step back. And, you know, for me, I know I do that. So at this point, I'm going to take close shots and try to make the right shots. And I've been doing better at that the last couple of years, but you know, it's tough when you got an exciting moment and you're trying not, like, I drew back on that deer and he was 25 yards broadside, and I just knew I didn't have the right shot with a couple of limbs in the way. And then when he started coming at me, I thought about sticking it right in his chest, and I held myself back from doing that. And then when he stopped right below me, I was like, I think I can sneak that in there. But it's like I took my time through the whole process. I didn't, and that's the biggest buck I've ever shot. So I was happy with the fact that I held my confidence, used my peep sight, you know, actually made the shot, because that's a very easy shot to mess up. So no doubt. That's that's how I feel too. It's like that muscle memory thing. I was glad that like whatever I had practiced before 100 million times took over in my brain, because while I was doing it, I don't remember any of it. It's like you mentioned the peep sight. It's like, I feel like every time I duck hunt, I'm like sitting in the blind or in cattails or boat or whatever, and I'm telling myself like, okay, this time I'm going to aim at those ducks. And then when they come in, I'm like, I empty my gun and I don't drop any ducks. And then I'm like, I did it again. I just got excited. And like, that's how I felt about this deer. And it could have been luck that I hit him as well as I did, but it could have been just, you know, that memory stuff taking over, and like that part's already done, you know? Absolutely. But it was cool. I mean, I was praising the good Lord that I was like, I can't believe because he didn't even, I mean, he was right there, you know, like I said, 4 acres, I can see through it. And he was right there. And I sat there for an hour and a half trying to calm down, just looking at him. I was like, there he is, laying down. And then I kept saying, I hope he's as big as I've been telling everybody he is, because I've been saying he's a monster, you know. And but was that an 8 or a 10? I don't remember. It was an 8. It was 8. Yep. Yeah, it was a beautiful 8 point. Biggest deer I've ever seen face to face, you know. Yeah, for sure. That's freaking awesome. Yeah, man. Welcome to the Finger Lakes. Yeah, no doubt. That's what my dad's up to camp texting me all morning, and we have no service up there, so he's like standing in the one little section of the camp with like 2 bars all morning. My mom was like, he was in the window all morning. I'm like, yeah, well, he was excited, and he's like, I almost jumped in the truck and drove down there, but it would have been about 4 hours. I was like, well, I wouldn't have blamed you if you did, but yeah, but Seneca County and the Finger Lakes bucks I'll stick around. That's for sure. No, it's a lot of fun hunting around here. Even the state land is fantastic. So
Yes, sir.
We'll try to have to hook up with our guns here and do a little still hunt or something on some state land.
I'm down. There's plenty of season left. That's the thing,
I got all of Thanksgiving week off, so if you're around at all, maybe that'd be a good week to go do a still hunt somewhere.
Let's do it. I got a nice cushy vacation that time of year, so.
Me too.
Right on.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate you jumping on. Sorry I was running late.
Hey, no worries, man.
But very glad to grab your story, and congratulations, and we'll have to hook up soon and do something.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. Thanks for bringing me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Good luck with the rest of your season if I don't catch up with you.
Thanks, buddy. You too.
Have a good one.
All right.